All right. Thank you so much for being with us. So my first question is to Samuel. Just to understand, how far along are African banks and financial institutions in their digital transformation journey on an average across Africa? So, Samuel, could you take up that question?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to address some of these questions. I think on average, if you give from a scale of 1 to 5, and also taking into consideration that different parts of Africa are on different paths. So I'd say maybe an average of 3. What has happened is that with the coronavirus, a lot of the banks and financial organizations have been forced to go digital because there were these lockdowns that stopped people from accessing public places, even going to the banks themselves. So banks were forced to adopt new methodologies and new technologies very, very quickly. So we can say that coronavirus has actually amplified the digital transformation and has actually pushed the digital transformation journey very far. The second thing that has transformed the banking and financial is the advent of social media, where we have these young people who form the majority of the population and basically require access to information, to their money in an instant, right? So that has also forced the banks to rethink their structure and to look at new ways of banking. The third one is the advent of mobile, whereby everybody has a mobile phone, right? And so you'll find that other mobile operators, fintech, startups, everybody is eating the bank's lunch. So banks have been forced to think outside the box and actually try to see if they can still retain the same customers without losing money. So I think the digital transformation, and especially so for the East, the South Africa, has really, really been very far. I think a bit of Central Africa, West Africa is still lagging, but I think everybody is actually trying to jump on the bandwagon, and everybody's trying to innovate around all these new challenges that have come. Thank you.
Right. Charles, what do you feel? To what extent have Africa's banks got onto the digital transformation journey? Samuel explained it is more of a reaction to what happened in COVID when, suddenly, you couldn't reach your customers, you couldn't interact with them face to face. Why were they so slow about doing this even pre-COVID? Because in Africa, we've seen example of, telephone companies offering, financial services. So do you think the banks were slow to adapt digital banking and digital finance? Or do you think they kept up pace with the change as it was demanded?
Thanks, Anisha, and thanks for the opportunity. I will be speaking in context to South Africa, and I will say partly SADC because of most of their systems at large, they are hosted in South Africa. I will say there's a big appetite in terms of cloud computing, though the AI part of it, it's still lagging behind. The reason why I'm saying that, I think we have, if you look into all the leading banks in South Africa, it's the banks that are having a hybrid and more dominantly cloud-based. So that's the basic cornerstone of it. The four old traditional banks are the ones that are sitting behind.
But why? Why are they behind, Charles? You explained to us that. Charles, could you? We can't see your video, but we can hear you. You said that banks were a little behind, but why? Because in South Africa, you have a lot of servers for the cloud companies. Why were banks slow to adopt to the cloud? Or why were they lagging?
Yes. Yeah, I'm saying like if you look, the the leading banks in South Africa are the ones that are cloud-based, looking at Capitec, looking into the Time Bank, looking into Bank Zero. Those are the ones that are highly adopting new customers daily, which is the most interesting part. But if you look into the old banks, the likes of Standard Bank, Nedbank, ABSA, and the other one, they are slow in terms of growth. They're depending on high credit debts that they have. But in terms of innovation, their innovation it's minimal because there isn't being. They're still stuck with the infrastructure. Remember, banking it's an infrastructure intense industry. So they're still stuck with the infrastructure that they bought, and the transition towards moving from those old system towards the new ways of doing things, AI-driven cloud banking services. It's a challenge because it will mean that you will have to re-engineer all the processes that have been run at the back end from in-house towards moving them towards the cloud, which is mostly a challenge to most of not only the banking industry and also most of the service institutions. So the high appetite of emerging banks that are saving on infrastructure and most of the in-house driven services, they are the ones that are appealing to people because at most, if you look at unto COVID, COVID disrupted most of the people's pocket and disrupted most of the companies. So everyone wants to save money, save costs at every little process that they can cut towards reaching their goal. So that is the most important thing that companies should look at. And what appeals to the young generation, it's not more around having multiple services, but satisfying their needs and making needs available to them at a fingertip. Because if you look at Africa, I will say like around about more than 80% of everyone has the access to the smartphone. So you don't want someone to go through the lengthy process of manualness. You want to move into the space whereby if I want to access the banking services, if there's a banking app that can give me a proper authentication and integrity check and make sure that there's verification, proper authorization there, then I can use my cell phone to access anything that I want. And if I need to access the service while I'm still in front of the vendor or wherever I want to make a transaction, let it be, because even the small vendors, they don't want to don't want to carry the cash, looking and to say that if you carry cash, you have multiple risks that you are inviting to yourself. So the best way is to say that let the cell phone banking or be it smart banking be the culture. And another thing, we're still stuck in a Stone Age culture of doing the banking in the traditional way. So the best way is to say that let everything be available at the fingertips. Then you'll see the culture will self-heal towards saying that let's jump into the train of digital transformation and cloud computing. It will be an automated one, even from the culture perspective.
All right. So a lot of changes have to be brought about to be digitally first, and perhaps that isn't such an easy path for incumbents. Devendran, what has been your experience? Now, Charles has laid it out for us. Samuel also told us what has been the reaction to the COVID pandemic. Now, the incumbents have their legacy technologies to work around. And, you know, even adoption of cloud is not an easy journey. It's not copy-paste for everyone. Everybody has to find their path. Plus, it also entails a cost. So how should incumbents approach this? Because, keeping legacy technologies and systems also entails a cost, because your customers want things fast and they want it digitally.
Thank you, Anisha, for the question. Firstly, I just want to apologize to everybody on the panel. I'm ill today, so I'm not. I'm actually in bed, so I'm not turning on the camera, but happy to participate. So Anisha, in terms of your question, right? I think there's quite a few reasons why. Sometimes financial institutions can be a bit slower on the journey to take up cloud and cloud adoption, right? Is that the gist of your question, right?
Sorry.
No, I'm asking, is this a follow-up to what Charles was saying in terms of why digital transformation and cloud computing is taking a bit longer in the financial services industry?
Yes. I wanted to understand because of the legacy systems that they have.
Yeah.
But holding on to the legacy systems also entails a cost. And if you don't change fast enough, your customers moved ahead, right? And we've already seen mobile companies garnering into the market share of banking players in a number of markets in Africa. So, why are banks so slow? And why is this the cloud journey not an easy one? It's not a copy paste for everyone, right?
Yes, absolutely. So, look, I mean, in my experiences in the bank over the last decade or so, I've seen a consistent theme in terms of cloud and cloud adoption, right? I think COVID has just also made the situation from a skills, from a headcount perspective, and from a budgeting perspective a lot more complex. But I would say that a lot of the financial institutions in South Africa have invested very heavily, even up to recently, on-premise infrastructure. So it becomes a balance of how do I innovate and modernize versus getting payback on the infrastructure that I've just laid out. And you find that a lot of banks are still dealing with that those kind of legacy costing issues. So one of the reasons I would say that banks are a little bit more slower in adopting, or some banks certainly, is the need to obviously contain costs and maintain a good sort of cost to income kind of ratio, right? So that's the first type of thing I've observed. The other thing I've seen as well is that one of the barriers is that cloud computing is obviously flexible, scalable, right? But sometimes, depending on the workloads that you're migrating to the cloud, it's not necessarily cost optimal. So sometimes you would get workloads being migrated or built in the cloud, but they're actually a little bit more expensive than on-premise. That's not usually the case. However, I've seen that some of the banks have to manage that balance between sweating the assets that the infrastructure assets that they have on premise while still investing in the cloud, and sometimes budget and obviously business appetite for this type of change can be a bit limited and low. So it's about finding that balance between divesting from your on-premise infrastructure while still delivering a service to your business at the same time moving that into the cloud. And I think the final point that I've seen as well is that what's a barrier for some financial institutions to move into the cloud is that it's legacy, right? But the workloads that we have on premises are just not cloud ready. You guys will understand that when you have to migrate workloads into the cloud, be it a financial institution or not, you've got to modernize. You've actually got to ensure that your cloud, your code and your builds are cloud ready, firstly. So they were able to be migrated into the cloud. And a lot of financial institutions are finding it difficult to balance out, do I keep this on-premise workload running to still, because it's working, it's keeping, and it's giving my business what it wants, versus moving into the cloud. I know I'll get that flexibility and scalability and agility, but it's going to take me a little bit more time, and my applications are not ready yet. So a lot of organizations are still going through the journey of making sure that their workloads are cloud ready so that we can actually put those in the cloud.
All right. Steve is also with us. Steve, we've heard Devendra, Samuel, and Charles speak about what the situation really is like. Now, there may be legacy issues, and maybe if you could explain, why were decision made to have on-site servers? Was it because of regulations? And are the fintech companies who weren't strung by these regulations able to capitalize on cloud computing and hence move faster? What are you seeing? And could you tell us, while there may be some merit in having some workloads on your on-premise servers, what are the benefits that you can derive from, banks can derive from cloud computing in terms of storage or scalability or cost efficiency? Because cost factor, Devendra did explain, it's not the same for banks versus fintech.
Thank you very much. What role has cloud computing played in banks and financial institutions going digital? I think that key to that is reduced cost to income ratio. Banks are able to significantly reduce their cost to income ratio by going cloud, increased flexibility. You don't need to pay for a resource that you do not require. So you are able to add additional computing resources as the need arises. Then transfer of support is also transfer of some aspect of the support service is given to the cloud service provider. So the organization is able to focus on other business critical areas. And then in terms of business continuity, a lot of these cloud providers, help with adequate redundancy and business continuity, disaster recovery planning, and all.
So, Steve, in hindsight, after all that happened with the pandemic, cloud computing seems to make sense. But is, like Devendra explained to us, what about banks who have already sunk the cost on legacy technologies? How would they know that, 2 years later, a pandemic would come, then I couldn't access my servers. I had to be on the cloud. Is it cost effective for them to leave the legacy systems and move everything to a cloud?
Okay, thank you very much for that question. Migration from legacy system to cloud has to be properly planned. It's not something that just that should be done in a hurry. You have to plan. There could be some services in your legacy system that are not supported within the cloud infrastructure. Some of those services you have to factor into your planning and make sure that you migrate in a very controlled manner. Thank you.
All right. I want to ask you, Samuel, Steve has explained to us that migration has to be in a planned fashion. Now, a lot of migration has happened, right? Banks are also adopting to what's happening, moving some processes to the cloud or otherwise, making a migration plan or otherwise. What do you think is prompting this reaction from banks? Are they scared of the competition of other fintech players? Are they reacting to the needs that arose because of COVID? Or is it the customer's demand? Why are they moving to the cloud? Why are they doing the migration of some of the work processes to the cloud? Samuel, the question's for you.
Of all those factors, key is, just like the previous speaker has just said, there has to be a rationalization of cost. Yeah, where the people are concerned, you need some employers, some employees. technology. There are some technologies that will be cheaper to run if they go on cloud, especially the non-essential, because in this day and age, being an IT security specialist myself, I do not see the need to have an on-prem. People are running desktop laptops and are working from home. So how then do you protect people who are working from home when your antivirus is on premise, right? So those are some of the ancillary services that can actually be moved very quickly. And I think the way to move to cloud is identify first which are your non-core assets that can very easily move. Something like a company website, a static website that does not have any transactional things, that is very easy to move to cloud. There is really no functional advantages of hosting your own company website, for example, right? That's a no-brainer. So other ancillary services, you start looking at across your enterprise. What can you move quickly, and what will be the benefits of moving those quickly? Now, the other reason why people are very hesitant on cloud, the other participants have touched on, but I've not had somebody talking about data sovereignty. Okay, so a lot of the governments are really now starting to tie down, especially banks, because they're holding their citizens' information. So a lot of people are actually a lot of governments are requesting that country information remains in country. So in such cases, for example, in Tanzania, that is the case. Other African countries, that's the case. So you are not comfortable to move all of your data as a bank or a financial organization into the cloud, okay? There are other regulatory reasons why you can't move all of your data to cloud. For example, in Kenya, you are mandated to have your data for more than 10 years, right? So you are looking at the cost benefit of having your storage on the cloud versus having an archive somewhere which is locked and can be accessed easily. So those are some of the things that people have to look into, okay? So the journey to digital transformation and to cloud computing and everything is very individual for every bank, every financial organization. It's really, really individual. Okay, but across the board, there are wins and there are losers, there are advantages and disadvantages, and the strategy needs to take into account what you want to achieve at the end of the day, right?
And it is your personal goal, it's the company's goal. It
exactly.
isn't a country-wide thing or an industry-wide thing, right?
No, because the day you stop looking at your own needs and start looking, okay, there are fintechs coming, let's launch a mobile app, you've lost it. Why? Because there's no strategy behind it, right? So in as much as all this disruption is coming along, yes, you have to align your strategy to something that works for you. Otherwise, 2 years, 3 years down the line, as we have seen now, other companies are actually moving back from the cloud and back into their data center, right? Because they started as a shift, knee-jerk reaction. So somebody says, okay, Bank X has moved their core banking. Let's all move our core banking. Without a strategy, without a vision, it doesn't work. So there has to be an individualized approach for every bank or for every financial organization that takes into consideration their own needs in as much as they are reacting to the outside. Yes, thank you.
And reacting to the competition. So Devendra, Shyamala has raised an important point, because in India also we have some regulations. Africa is a large place, and all countries will have different regulations, but are banks and financial institutions comfortable to store and manage customer data using cloud? Because are there regulatory hurdles, and what can be done about this? If cloud is more efficient, can the regulators also come on board?
No, absolutely. I think it's been a journey in the last few years in South Africa. I mean, when I remember when we started having the cloud conversation with the South African Reserve Bank back in 2015, 2016 to talk about cloud, there was a lot of pushback because, as Samuel mentioned, data sovereignty very, very key kind of request. And if you look at the media, it's well understood, for example, that the U.S. government can tap into the data centers that's being hosted in its data centers. So a lot of regulatory authorities are nervous about those type of sort of backdoor options that that certain governments have in America, for example. And so there's the conversation, as I said, when I got involved in it in like 2015 or so, was about how do we protect our data? That's quite key. Luckily, that's as we all know, we've been able to from an Africa perspective leverage off the data and the data privacy regulations in the EU specifically. So that's allowed a lot of financial institutions to host their data in the cloud in data centers like in Ireland, and which is very closely aligned to our sort of data and privacy kind of regulation. So I think that took a lot of time at the beginning of Africa's cloud journey to make sure that we can actually satisfy the regulatory authorities to ensure that our data is properly protected. And now, it's becoming a lot more easier, especially like in South Africa, for example. You will know that AWS and Microsoft Azure have data centers in country, so automatically we're able to plug that gap in terms of ensuring that the data is treated in a private manner and adheres to the country's regulatory requirements. So it is improving, and I think we're at a stage now where we can accelerate our journey to the cloud. Now that we've been able to satisfy the regulatory authorities' requirements. Yes, sorry, was there a second part to that question as well? I might have missed that.
Yes, the second part was, will the regulators come on board? I'm guessing that's a journey that doesn't happen in a whiff of a moment, right?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think for me, again, from what I've seen, is that we've spoken about data sovereignty, but I think as well, there are key sort of acts and laws out there that we need to adhere to. GDPR, the POPI Act, which is Personal Protection of Information, Personal Information Acts. So, the cloud has actually been quite, well, not the cloud, but cloud providers, your Googles, your Amazons, your Azures, have been very good in providing the capability and tools for you to certainly scrub and mask certain bits of key data, so that you give the regulatory authorities the comfort that even though the data is in the cloud, it's properly protected, and that no personal information can be about specific clients and customers can be easily attainable, in that sense. So there's a lot of tools and methods we can use to actually ensure that the data is protected in when using cloud, from source, in transit, and at rest in the cloud as well. And I think that's given the regulatory authorities a bit more comfort as well, that the data can be properly, the security around it is quite good. So I think we've crossed the big hurdles in that sense. And now I think it's up to individual banks and organizations to actually embark on the journey, because the way the data is being protected is quite secure, and it is industry viable. So it's about us accelerating that journey now to push workloads into the cloud.
Okay, so that's one challenge less, and that's good news. Charles, we've discussed a number of challenges that have existed towards cloud adoption. Now, could you give us examples of some innovations that have been made possible in banking and financial services because of greater computing power enabled by cloud computing? Beyond lending, payments, in the run-of-the-mill banking services, could you give us some examples of innovations because of cloud computing?
Yeah, thanks, Anisha. I will say that, for example, I'm not advocating for the institution, but there's some few institutions, like from banking perspective, opening a bank a bank account within, like, for example, Time Bank, Bank Zero, and I think latest is like the likes of Capitec. You don't have to go and follow the queue and carry all the documentation that might be heavy for you. And looking into the issue of COVID, having to go into the red zones. You just do everything that you have to do online through the banking app. And there's multiple authentication. For example, in Bank Zero, they have employed voice authentication. They've employed picture verification, and even your FIC documents. All of those, you just upload them. Then the bank the account get approved while you are sitting at the comfort of your safety. Then you order the card through that banking app, and it goes to the location where you feel that you are feeling safe or comfortable. It be delivered to. So those are the moves that has been done, and that's why I said to in the beginning, Cloud Journey, it's not it's being approached specifically in, I will say, not in a well thought process, because based on the following reason. A Cloud Journey, it's not an individual journey. It's a shared journey, because of most of what brought cloud computing is to eliminate the issue around infrastructure cost. That's why we have infrastructure as a service, application as a service, outsource some of your development and whatever, because of most of the banking industry. They have companies that they've hired to do certain things. That's why we have as a service. So have a partners that you identify that share the common goal. Quite frankly, most of the banks, though they can't admit publicly, but they share data at some level. So why can't they say, like, okay, let's invest and build our own cloud as banking, where we will let's build our own cloud as banking industry, where we'll host all the data, and where we will do a cloud service. Then that can be leveraged as a service. Then we maintain that will cover from the issue of skill shortage. It will cover from the issue of management, and also another question as a second one from our regulatory. I feel that one is applicable across Africa. Most of the technical regulations and legislations that governs the cloud computing, they are more driven from a legal perspective instead of them being driven from a partnership with technology people, because law people, they understand law. Technology people understand technology. So it should be a shared vision to say, like, let's get into the room, let's build a legislation that will ensure that whatever that we are doing is representative of the vision that we want to realize. That can be something that as Africa as a whole, we don't have to put heavy reliance onto attorneys to build our legislation. It has to be a shared vision, and that in that way we will manage to win most of the hurdles from fintech and also from innovation perspective.
Absolutely, Charles. What you spoke about was something that resonates with everyone, because our first keynote speaker also spoke about this, about having all stakeholders coming together to get the regulatory perspective with the vision for the future, so that they're on the same track. Steve, we've heard Charles give us some examples on the innovations that have been made possible by cloud computing. He gave an example of how you can open an account without having to physically visit the bank, without having to get physical documents or get a physical, a printout of a photograph, and you can still get your bank account. But are there any concerns about compliance, about fraud, and how are these issues being tackled? Because our keynote speaker also spoke about how some of the financial services are being offered by telecom companies that are not regulated by the banking regulator, but the telecom regulator. So are there any worries about fraud and compliance because of these new age products that are coming in thanks to cloud computing?
Okay, thank you very much. Issue of compliance is very key. So when you have subscribed to cloud computing, fraud and every other thing that comes along with cloud computing is a major concern. So for banks and financial institutions that are regulated, let me give you an example. The CBN has a standard blueprint of requirements that must be met by cloud service providers, part of which is compliance to ISO standards. So such compliance requirements are aimed at beefing up the security of the cloud infrastructure being provided by the cloud vendors. And then the organization itself is supposed to have an internal compliance team that will ensure that at all times the IT department is complying to all the regulatory requirements, which will in turn translate to security of data and security of the organization at large. Thank you.
All right, now we're coming towards the close of our discussion. So I'm going to ask each one of you to give me your favorite financial innovation in the banking or financial services, the service that you like the best, and what is the upcoming thing that you're looking forward to, which will be enabled because of cloud computing. Charles, let me start with you. Your favorite digital banking and financial service, which is the one that you like most? And what is it, that one thing that you're looking forward to in the future, some kind of innovation that could be made possible by cloud computing?
I will I will retro Anisha when I'm answering, meaning that I will start with the last question. My wish is to say that across all African countries, banks should collaborate, especially when they approach the cloud, and they should leverage off the state data. The reason why I'm saying like they should leverage off the state data, Home Affairs. Home Affairs has the data to each and every individual, and that can be one of the tying mechanism to solving the challenge that we see around digital identity fraud, which is the question that you asked previously. So if the bank can collaborate with the Home Affairs or the customs institutions, they will be able to eliminate a lot of identity fraud, which is the biggest pain in digital identity strategy. And what I like about the digital transformation issues, it's more around to say that we are moving towards a green ecosystem, and more towards to say that it gives an opportunity to say, like, without any boundaries, you can spin off innovation to the requirements that you like, and skill shortage we still have, but if we are moving to cloud, you can still manage to pool resources everywhere in the world to make sure that your requirements at the end of the day get fulfilled in the accurate most manner. Thank you.
All right, Devendra, your most favorite banking and financial services that is digital, and that one thing that you would like from this industry in the future?
Sure, thanks, Anisha. I think for me, the most exciting innovation that's been around for a while, but I think it can still be expanded, particularly in Africa. I love the omni-channel sort of experience, so which can be enabled by cloud, right? So I love the fact that we're able to speak to your customers in a very tailor-made and customized way. That allows you the customer to feel valued and to have a personal kind of experience, and do it across the different channels, right? Mobile, desktop, telephone, whatever the case might be. It really those various channels actually fits very nicely into the customer's life in terms of what they have access to at a particular point in time, right? So for me, it opens up a lot of possibilities in terms of being able to market and sell banking products. So for me, omni-channel is something that I've been quite excited about, and quite happy to sort of utilize the channels. The one thing that I'd like to see going forward, that from an innovation perspective, which I think we could tap into, we've all heard the term that data is an asset, right? And I really believe that it's important for financial institutions to be able to understand the customer better, get the data, get the metrics, be able to do some very intelligent analytics on the data, be able to go into the mind of the customer, understand what they're looking for. And I think that innovation, it's been done by a lot of financial institutions, but I think we can do more to actually tap into other forms of data, social media data, structured, unstructured data as well, to really get to the heart of what the customer wants, and then from there be able to give them a more personalized, tailor-made experience.
All right. So you like the omni-channel experience, and you'd like perhaps even better data analytics to customize customer experience, give them something very personalized. Samuel, what is your most favorite service, digital service from the banking sector, and what would you like to see in the future? The one thing that you'd like to see in the future.
So for me, the best thing that I've seen come so far is mobile banking, where I do not have to see a teller. I do not have to walk and travel many kilometers to the nearest bank branch, because that has been the case. I do not have to stand in line, okay, waiting for about 2 hours to be able to, standing in a line for 2 hours, 3 hours, so that I can be able to query a balance of my own account, of my own money. So for me, mobile banking has presented the best innovation so far coming from the banks. What I'd like to see more of, and I think Devendran touched on it, is monetization of that data. Because at the end of the day, we're all here to make money, right? So what more can I extract from this customer data? Because remember, banks hold a lot of the customer data, right? Structured, unstructured, social, whatever. How can we monetize this data? So omni-channels, social media, gamification, and all those other beautiful technologies that are coming in, right? Are there enhance our use and data-driven decision making processes, and also ability for the banks to even make more money. Because I don't understand why I can buy, if I am able to use the loan, the bank, the loan from the buy insurance for it, right? Through the same channel, right? I
basically more upselling.
Yeah, definitely. I should be able to do everything through my bank. I do not have to go through another payment. I want to go to the bank. I want to go to the supermarket, for example, right? And instead of pulling my credit card, I just use. And it's a B2B at the back end. It doesn't matter in front of my face. So for me, that monetization of data and also the integration of other players into this ecosystem makes it beneficial for everyone. Yes, and it becomes beneficial for everyone. Yes.
All right.
So that's what I'd like to see more. Yes.
Right. Yeah. Even I welcome digital banking, Samuel. I've even forgotten how to write check. And if I write a check, it'll be rejected because I've forgotten how to sign it. So everybody's become so used to digital banking. Steve, your last word. What is your favorite financial service which is offered digitally, and what would you like to see next?
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to say that according to the African Bankers Report of 2020, 52% of African banks considered better client service as the single most important priority for digital transformation. So that tells you how important digital customer service is to digital transformation. Therefore, for me, I would say that hyper-personalized customer experience is enabled by AI and machine learning is key. And so far, the banks have done well, meeting up to expectation by leveraging machine learning and AI, especially when it comes to retail loans. Today, you can just dial a certain code and you're able to get facilities. But what I would like to see more of is the banks leveraging on predictive models to forecast the needs of the customers, and even preempt what they would need and service them accordingly. Thank you very much.
All right. So you want data to be used for predictive analytics so that you can bait customers with more services and have them pay for it. Thank you so much, Steve, Samuel, Charles, and Devendran for joining us for this very interesting discussion on cloud computing. What are the challenges in Africa, what it is enabling in Africa, and what the future holds. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your perspectives and ideas with us. Thank you.